Hello, everybody. So today we're going to be looking at a sort of preview for the regionals, I guess that they're called. I'm not really sure. Whatever our replacement for Worlds is, just as a sort of what's going to be popular, what the meta is, and why, and sort of running through what people are playing. And we're going to make a tier list because people love tier lists. And whoa, how did twitch.tv/thefishnick that's going to be broadcasting a watch party when the games are live get here? Whoa, how did that? So, um, for a quick definition on what the tiers mean, SS is going to be don't let this through draft, otherwise you're pretty much going to lose. S is going to be like you can let it through draft, but you really shouldn't. S is going to be, or A plus is going to be like this is going to be the stuff that you should be picking really early that your drafts are usually going to be built around because the stuff in S and SS are going to be banned. A is going to be really good fillers, right? Stuff that you want on your team. A minus is going to be more niche stuff, but still like the good niche stuff. Like it's not good in every situation, but when you pick it, it's good and it's going to be picked frequently. B plus is going to be it's pickable, but usually outclassed, but like it's still fine. B minus is pickable, usually outclassed or not needed. And then B minus is going to be technically pickable, but you're not going to see them. And then C is going to be not viable. And the last tier, actually, I forgot to do this, is comp band. Atlas is bugged right now. If he ults someone who has like charges on an ability, basically, okay, I'm not going to explain it, but like, or actually, no, I will. Basically, if he ults someone who has used all of their charges on an ability, like Ruckus missiles or Tyra nades, and he banishes them, they will not be able to use that ability until all of their charges come back after they're unbanished, instead of having to wait for just one. It's a really weird interaction, it's really niche, but it resulted in a super high priority, very meta off tank being banned. But you know, IO bug is still in the game. But that's fine, right? Anyhow, so let's actually get into the drafts. We're gonna start at SS. Torvald. Torvald is the most broken character in the game by like a lot. Like, don't give this guy to the other team. It's not an instant win, but it does mean that you win draft really, really hard, right? You just bubble a DPS. The DPS doesn't have to reload anymore. They get healed. They get 1,000 extra HP. It's insane. They get to go kill things. They get to live dives. They do whatever they want. He's busted. Like the only time where you might even consider giving someone Torvald is on Ice Mines, and when you have to think about whether you need to ban a character on their worst map, he's kind of strong. So yeah, Torvald, you're probably not even going to see him get played. Honestly, like, NA permabans him. EU doesn't think he's good for some reason, which is really dumb. BR, I think, permabans him. So you're not going to see this guy unless it's like some European teams pulling out some janky stuff. Next up in S, Koa. So this is, I don't know how well this is going to apply to rank. It's probably going to apply to rank like a little bit. This is for like particularly the regionals, like high level scrims right now. So Koa, he wins tank matchups. Like if you have a Makoa on your team, then you're pretty much set. Like, what is the other team gonna pick that's going to counter a Makoa? Like, nothing. Nothing does well into no tanks do well into Makoa. Like, some things have okay matchups, like Khan and Ruckus have okay matchups. Nothing does well. Nothing wants to fight into a Makoa. So if you get Makoa, it means your offlane is going to have a good matchup. And if your offlane has a good matchup, that opens up like so much. He plays super well with DPS. You can get follow-up on your hooks. People can use your half shells. The communication is so good. So good. Next up in S, or A+, we have Rom. So Rom is a character who... he benefits greatly from the Atlas ban, let's just say. There are very few counters to him left in the game. There's like, Genos is a good one. Grover is like okay. Shaw is eh. Con is eh. Koa's eh. Like, there's not many things that actually stop a ROM. And even if they do stop a ROM, you're forcing the other team to draft around him. You're taking resources, and that's even if the ROM has to dash. Like, what if you're playing main tank ROM? ROM is a super good main tank right now, especially in North America. The other regions haven't quite caught on that ROM is a really good main tank yet. But he can farm an Ara, and if he doesn't have to dash, let's say you have, like, Genos Grover, like, let's say you went double support, Genos Grover Shaw, and then the ROM just, like, shoots your Ara all game. All of a sudden, you've got, like, all these counters to ROM, and the ROM's like, I don't even care, I'm just going to kill your tank. So he's super flexible, he forces the other team to draft, and he works even into his counters. He's just insane. He's first pickable. Cassie next. So Cassie is the most generic good stuff's DPS you could probably get. She is basically just, like, she'll work in anything. Like, she's really good into aggressive comps. She has really good matchups into the stuff that's aggressive right now, like Rom, Maeve, spoilers, Ruckus, Andro, Evie. Like, she just has good matchups into pretty much everything right now. She is the go-to backliner right now. So, like, she just, if you don't know what to pick and draft, just plop a Cassie in there, she'll probably do fine. She has really good matchups. Next we have Maeve. Maeve is, so there's 3 real flankers, right? Andro, Evie, Maeve. You could fit Buck in there if you wanted. Maeve is the one who has the best meta matchups right now, right? Willow is really strong. Con's really strong. It's mostly Willow, honestly, and the fact that this meta is very engagey. Like, fights tend to happen all at once, whether it's like a Rom going in, or a Con ult hitting, or like a Willow ult, or something. So having that sort of big, global, really impactful ult really helps her. She also works really well with Luminary. She does well into every flank. She does well into Willow. She does well into Drogue. She does well into just about everything. She has really good matchups with the meta right now. Best flank right now if you can play her. Not many. I mean, there's most teams at regionals can play, the Maeve. Some teams can't, but you should be able to play Maeve. Anyhow, next up, Vivian. Vivian, she's getting nerfed the next patch, but this patch she still has her full damage. She's only lost her survivability. So you do need to draft around her, right? You do need to play, like, like a Makoa Term Grover Vivian sort of like style, like really slow. But she farms tanks. Her damage is still insane. So if you can set up a draft for a Vivian where she survives, because she's still somewhat vulnerable to flankers now, right? Because of the nerfs. But if you can set up a draft for her where she's protected and she can do her thing, she's going to destroy you. So just because of that, she's A+. Next up, I'm going to call it the ROM of DPS. It's Willow. Willow is slept on right now. Oh my god, nobody knows this character is good. Some teams in NA do. Some teams in NA do. But, like, if you don't have an answer to Willow, right? Like, if you have, like, Cassie and Buck, I don't know. You lose? Like, you just kind of lose? Like, Willow ult is so strong. It can be comboed with so many things. She burns point better than almost anything in the game. If you have a free Willow, like, she can't be dove either. Like, if you ever try to dive her with, like, a ROM, she just, like, ults and leaves. She's actually just, like, she just leaves. You can't kill her if you don't have, like, some direct counter. Willow is insanely strong. You will see teams drafting around her. You remember how people, like, used to draft around, like, a Worm Drogue? Like, oh, we need a hit scan for Drogue on this map. Same thing for Willow. You need a counter for her. And those counters aren't super hard either. Like, I know some people will play Willow into Andro. You just buy Haven, get DR, and play with your support. Like, it's doable. So, expect to see a lot of Willow. At least in NA. Next up, Genos. This meta is very dependent on tank matchups because a lot of the off tanks are very strong if you let them be unchecked, right? Torv, Koa, Rom, all super strong right now. But the reason that those tanks are strong is, like, the reason that you have tanks is to make space for your DPS. And if you have a Genos, your DPS are better than the other team's DPS. Which is, usually good. If your DPS are just going to kill more things, it tends to work out pretty well. So, A+. He's not always the best pick. He's a good counter to ROM, which is really rare right now. But he's, like, if you get a Genos and you draft around your Genos, right, you're not going to play, like, an Ara turn with a Genos. You have to play somewhat aggressive. Again, like Vivian, he forces a certain kind of draft. But if you do draft that way, he's very good. Next up is Ayah, who I'm sure some people have been wondering where she is, because at the beginning of the patch, I thought she was gonna be here, right? That's why I thought she was gonna be better than Torv. She's not, and it's because of one reason. She just dies. She just dies over and over and over. In competitive play, Ayah is the squishiest character in the game. If the other team has any sort of mobility, any sort of dive comp, not even dive, just mobility and some sort of teamwork, Ayah dies every single time the enemy team wants her to be dead. There is very, very little an Ayah can do, barring some nutty outplay or an alt, or I mean that's really it. Or everyone peeling for her. Even then, it's probably still a trade. Ayah just dies. However, if the other team does not have the tools to kill Ayah, if they have like a really pokey comp, right? Ayah is insane. DR is insane. Luna is insane. Ayah sucks, but DR and Luna are super good. So if you have a comp where Ayah is actually just not gonna play respawn simulator for the entire game, like let's say the other team was like Khan and Ara and like a support like a Cassie and like a solo Maeve, Ayah's not gonna die to that. Then you play Ayah and you're good to go. So she's not gonna be first picked because then teams will play dive into her and kill her on respawn. But if she is let through draft and a team does get a good opportunity to play Ayah, she's insane. If you get a good Ayah draft, S tier easily. But she's only A plus because she gets countered so easily. By the way, the way I'm organizing these things isn't in any particular order. It goes tanks, DPS, supports, and it's alphabetical, just so it looks pretty. So A tier, we have Khan. So Khan is one of the few tanks that has like an okay matchup into Makoa. Khan has like a lot of. He's super flexible. First of all, Storm of Bullets is a nutty off tank talent, and Leon's Shield is pretty darn good at main tank. It's niche, but it's good. So it gives him that flexibility. Because if you don't want to play Leon's Shield, you just like pick a main tank and say, okay, we're playing off tank Khan now, and that's perfectly fine. So he's super flexible in draft. His ult is Zinn ult but better. It's literally just a kill. So, and he's got really good off tank matchups. The only downside about Khan is that some DPS kind of farm him. Like Vivian and BK both do super well in Khan. So even though Khan and Koa match up pretty evenly, it's still kind of risky to give the other team Koa, because if they go Koa, you go Khan, the other team goes BK, Khan still dies. So it kind of nullifies that advantage that he has. But he's still a super good pick. He's just not. So if you pick him in the wrong draft, he'll get farmed, right? So you do have to be careful. Next up is Ruckus. Ruckus is strong because the things he does well into are strong. Like I said, Ayah gets farmed. Genos gets farmed. Like, there's so many things in the meta right now that Ruckus does well into. And Ruckus also does well with pockets, right? Have you ever Ayah pocketed a Ruckus who just goes in and takes the entire enemy team's attention? It's so strong. Like, he's not going to be picked every time, right? Like, Ruckus is... He does one thing. He dives. He goes in. Actually, that's a lie. He was played a bit differently back in PPL. Like, sometimes people would play him as like he would lurk in a lane where like... A side tangent here, but it's really interesting. So like he would just hide behind a wall and just like stay there. And then if a team tried to push past him, he would go flank. And if they tried to push him out, he would just leave. And it was a really, like, lurking like that is a really good way to hold space. Like, I saw, I don't know, it was like a Mouse Sports Kanga game or on Ascension where, like, someone did it. I forget. I probably couldn't find the VOD. But anyhow, he's played in this meta as dive. Probably because PPC players, or in PPC teams, probably haven't put in the work to figure out Ruckus as a lurker yet, because it is hard to pull off. But he still does this dive thing really, really well. He's always going to get a trade. If you have Ruckus and the other team gets an Ayah, they're both going to die on cooldown. So yeah, just like he dives. He gets trades. He has good matchups. He farms. But he's not pickable all the time. BK is next. BK is next because he has good, like his maps. If you pick BK on a good BK map, he's going to do really well. He doesn't have too many bad matchups. He does really well into a lot of strong tanks right now, like especially Khan. So yeah, like he's just the best. He's the best pure blaster, right? Like Willow sort of needs high ground to work with, or she really likes high ground to work with. Her ult kind of makes that but BK you can just say, hey, we want a blaster, let's take the BK, and BK will pop off. BK will do great. He's just solid blaster, A tier. Next up, I'm going to lump these two together. It's Kinessa and Strix. So ever since the Victor nerfs, it's really only been these two that are long-range DDs. So, or like long-range hit-scan backliners. Hit-scan backliners, DD is the same term. It's direct damage. So, like usually there's your DD player who's your hit-scan, and we usually play as backliners. And there's your BB, who's your blaster boy. It's just, I mean, it doesn't really make sense, but it's just like DD, BB, you know. So your blaster boy who plays like, you know, the blasters and the flanks, and that's usually how the roles are split. Anyhow, the only good DDs left, right? Not the only good ones, but the only like super long range DDs left. Outranging the other team is really cool. If you get like there's the same thing as Vivian, except they're long range and they don't do quite as well when they're supported. So if you can support them, that's great. Though, like if you can just hard outrange the other team, lets you burn point better, and like it's just tough to play into. So you do have to play around them. Snipers can be countered pretty easily. Remember, like Ruckus Rom, like there's a lot of dive things in this meta, but they can work really well. So next up we have Zinn. Zinn is he's a character. He ults you and you die, and there's almost nothing you can do about it. So he's good because he ults and you die. that's it. That's it, man. Like Yomi's okay, but like Yomi would be like B plus or A minus. Like it wouldn't be A tier, but just because of guillotine, he hits a button and your tank dies. The only reason he's not higher is because his base kit isn't like insanely strong or anything. It's just his ult with guillotine. He survived. Like, don't get me wrong, Zinn's a fine character with Yomi. He's just not as good as guillotine because Yomi's like more of a niche anti-flank, I'd say. Like you pick him into like console flanks on small maps, but guillotine's in. You can play him a lot in like a lot of spaces just because his ult kills things. Like you will win fights if you have Zinn on your team. You will win fights just because of his ult, which is really cool. Next up, we have the best non-pocket support in the game. We have Treeman himself, Grover. He does everything. He literally does everything. Grover does everything you could ever want a non-pocket support to do. He has good healing. He pokes out DPS. He has pick potential. He has CC. He has a good ult. He can work in any sort of comp. I will play Grover in a ROM Ruckus if I need to. I'll swear to God, I'll vine to the other team's backline. It will work. He just works everywhere. He's insane. He can fight DPS as a support at long range, which is insanely valuable. He forces rezo buys for the entire enemy team. He's so good. He's so good. A minus. So back to tanks again. We have Ashe. Ashe is just the teensiest bit outclassed, right? It's like Ashe's thing is that she's aggressive, right? She goes in. Rom and Ruckus sort of do that thing right now. So she's not picked super often. Europe loves this character, by the way. Europe just loves Ashe. I don't know why. Brazil loves her too, actually, now that I think of it. But yeah, she's good. Like, if you want something that goes in, Ashe is good. She doesn't have great tank matchups. Koa, Rom, Khan, not great for her. You can sort of counterpick DPS. Again, like, if they have a Khan, you can pick Ashe BK and you'll probably be okay. But like she's good, right? She'll work. You just can't pick her every time. Next up, solid main tank, we have Fernando. Fernando's just going to sit on point. He's going to put shield up. He's Fernando. That's all he does now. But he does it really well. It's like a 4-second cooldown on a big-ass shield. Like, he's just going to live. But that's it. Like, he doesn't do well. You can't pick him early, because if you pick Nando early, the other team can go Term or Khan. And that's really rough for Nando. But he'll still do well. He'll sit on point good. Next up, something similar. Term. Term will also sit on point good. He's probably the closest thing that we have to old Inara right now. Like, he just sits on point. Give him enough heals and he'll sit on point into anything. So Yeah, he does pretty well. He's just a main tank. I don't know. Like they're the top two main tanks right now. I mean, maybe not. Maybe not. They both do it well. It depends on the situation. There's no main tank that I'd say is like definitely better. Like Rom, Khan, Nando, Term, I'd all consider like pretty much the same depending on the situation. Next up, we have Andro. Andro is like the most standard flank you could really get. Like he's just a flank. He'll work well if you pick him. He's counterpicked a bit more easily than he was previously, so that's kind of not why he's as high. He has a very important interaction where he's really good into Willow. So sometimes you'll see teams pick up Andro really early to try to get a free Willow later. Because if the Andro has a bad matchup, but you have a free Willow, that's fine. So he's also the only flank that controller players can play. So if the team is mixed or fully console, then you're going to see him prioritized pretty highly. Next up is Evie. Evie, again, she's a flank. She works well. Like Andro, Evie, and Maeve are all on the same level. The difference in their tiers are just because of their meta matchups, right? Evie just loses to Willow, so it's not as good. And she's also counterpicked easily. So, or not easily, but you know, like why would you not just take the thing that has better meta matchups? Like this will vary from team to team and player to player, and based on whatever level of comfort they have. But she's fine. Like she'll do her job. Next up is Drogue. Drogue is like Willow, but worse. If you get it, like Drogue is only up here. I mean, sure you can pick him on like Frog and Ice Mines if you really want, but Drogue is only really up here because if you get a free Drogue game, like the other team doesn't have like a good hit scan or something, then you pick Drogue, and Drogue farms. I mean that's it. That's it. If it's a good Drogue matchup, Drogue does well. If it's not a good Drogue matchup, you're picking something else. On that theme, we have Pip. Pip is underrated in my opinion, but it's the same thing as Drogue. If there's a good Pip matchup, you can pick him, and he'll do really, really well. If Pip doesn't have good DPS matchups, then he's not going to do well, and you're not going to pick him. So like Pip and Drogue are the same thing. They're both like, I'd say they're both like last pick DPS, but if you do get them in a good game, they're going to do super well. Next up is Shaw. Shaw's taken a bit of a hit this patch because Shaw's thing is that he does super well into flanks. This meta has changed a little bit. There are now more off tanks. Shaw doesn't do as well into off tanks. He still does okay. He still does okay. That's why he's an A-. But there's usually better options, so he's reserved as a counter pick. So like if the other team has double flank, you can okay, we'll do Shaw here. Like he's a good pick. It's just he's fallen down a little bit, and he's more of a counter pick now, but still is fine into certain DPS. Next up is Corvus. I don't know which icon I should choose because there's two of them on this tier list for some reason. Okay. So Corvus, this is another character that Europe loves for some reason. He is strong, right? Don't get me wrong. Corvus is like really good. He's not priority because there's usually better supports. He does the healer thing fine, but again, Grover exists. He does the Mark thing fine. Genos exists. Like he does his thing well, right? He enables DPS really well. He gives them the mark and they go do things. That's fine. It's just it's not as strong as it was, and sometimes there's better options. Like he still does his thing. He still enables DPS. It's just not as well. And yeah, sometimes you might want to pick another support. He's still really good though. So he can still keep a team alive, decent damage, all that good stuff. Next up is Furia. I think Furia is kind of underrated. You do need to pick her like almost exclusively in super aggressive comps, but that's fine. If you take Furia and you put her in a super aggressive comp, she'll do super well. But aside from that, no, don't pick Furia. But if you do get a good Furia game, pick her. That seems to be like the theme of A-. It's like if these characters get a good game, they will pop off, but they don't always get good games. So these are going to be the champions that are like picked later in the draft. Next up is Ying. Ying is, again, remember how I talked about like Maeve ult being strong because a lot of this meta is like really engagey, like the fight happens all at once. So Ying ult is super good for that, right? Ying is a throughput healer who she'll keep anything alive. She's really survivable against dive, which is kind of important, right? If you're teleport, you can just, TP around, spam the button until either they die or she lives, or she dies or they do. You get the idea. And her ult is gonna win fights. Like, it's super good. People have forgotten how good Ying ult is. It's 600 and something healing. No, it's just 600 healing per second for 5 people. That's insane, right? So she's good in this meta. If you need a throughput healer, that's not Grover, or if you don't want Dumbo for some reason. Next up, we're going to B+. So again, heading into a bit more niche now. First up, for the tank, we have Anara. Anara's nerfs have hit her kind of hard. Not super hard. She's still good. But you can't just say, like, okay, we want a main tank. Oh, let's just take Anara. You actually have to put some thought into it now. There's matchups and there's other things. And honestly, I don't think Anara's good. But, like, she's pickable, right? Like, I'd much rather have anything that's above her. But if I have an Anara on my team, I'm like, okay, that's cool. We're fine. Like, this is good. Like, we didn't throw draft. Good job, guys. But she struggles a bit more into certain things, like heavy backline damage. She struggles a little bit more into. She still struggles into Willow, Vivian. Like, knows the meta DPS kind of farm her a little bit. So it's not a great meta for her. She took some nerfs. There are usually better options, but she's fine in some situations. Following that same thing, we got Dredge. Dredge, again, you're not going to pick him every time, but if you, for some reason, need, like, just a ton of AoE damage, yeah, take Dredge. He'll do his job. His job is very, very niche, but he'll do it, and he'll do it well. So that's about it, though. Like, that's Dredge. If you need him, take him, but most of the time you won't. So I wouldn't expect Dredge to be picked, to be honest, but I wouldn't be shocked either. Next up, we have Leon. If you want a sniper, but you do not want to take a sniper, you can take Leon. She's got a good matchup into Willow, which is definitely a point in her favor. She's got long range poked, really good ult. Like, that's it, really. Like, if you need her, yeah, by all means. She's okay. It's just, you don't really need her that often. And if you do, why not take a sniper? So, like, she has her good matchups, right? She is better into flanks than snipers. And maybe, like, you want her ult, or maybe you want something with a bit more mobility, or who knows. She's pickable. She's very matchup dependent. Keeping with the theme of matchup dependent DDs, we have Tiger, who is basically the same thing. Like, same thing as Leon, except different matchups. He's good on, like, ice mines and some certain maps, and he's better into, like, let's say Vivian, because he can use his explodey sword to get behind Vivian shield. Stuff like that. But he's generally outclassed, and you're only going to pick him if he has a really good matchup or if it's a really good map for him. And actually, we're continuing the theme. Tyra. So Tyra is, like, just the brawliest champion in the game. If you're going to be fighting a close range, messy fight, Tyra's going to be really good. It's just those those types of fights don't tend to happen super often, and there's sometimes better things to pick. So she's okay. She gets outranged really, really hard, which kind of sucks. But if you're gonna get dove and you just want to live, and you want, like, however much DR she has when she uses all 3 nades, she's gonna do really well. Last in this tier, we have Dumbo. Dumbo is never a bad pick. Like, he'll do Dumbo things. It's just usually this meta, there's more specific things that you could want. Like, there's no real reason to pick him over Grover. His ult is really good, and he survives super well against flanks, which is something that you could, that's definitely a point in his favor. That's a niche he has. But I think that's really it. Like, if he's not under pressure, I'd almost rather have Ying for the ult, or Corvus for the marks, or Grover because he does everything better, or like Genos or Ayah. He's very, like, he does this thing where he lives against flanks and lives against dive, and that's great. That's what he does. He has a niche now. He's not so much better than every other healer if you play him super well that you need to pick him all the time. Like, you can play Dom, but like we're talking about regionals, right? We're talking about the top 12 teams in the world. Every support's going to know how to play Dumbo really well, and they're going to need to play him at that high level to get the value out of him. But that value might not be more than the other supports. On to the next tier. We have Barrick, who originally I said was just the worst and garbage. He's pickable. He's the worst main tank. I don't think anyone's going to argue that. I mean, some people would say Nara is the worst. Barrick is a main tank who needs good matchups to be okay. Like, he does okay into Term, he does okay into Con, he does, like, you know, if you need, like, I saw him picked earlier with, like, Genos on Ascension Peak into a Term, and, like, he did well. Like, Barrick's not going to pop off or whatever, but he's pickable in certain matchups, but generally you're not going to see him. Next one is Buck. Buck has one thing that he does really well, and that's shut down 1v1s. If the other team is like a Maeve or a luminary pocketed Maeve, or like a Andro, and you just want to say, I don't want to let that thing kill my backline, you can pick a Buck, and the Buck will just 1v1 that thing for the entire game, not lose. Both of them will just be taken out of the fight, and then the rest of your team can go do whatever. He's super good at that. However, that situation doesn't come up super often anymore. Like, most of the time, you're going to have, like, if the Maeve is going in, you're going to have, like, a Ruckus going in, or a Rom going in, or maybe you're going to have 2 flanks, or, you know? So it's not, like, solo flanks aren't as common in this meta as they used to be, so Buck's job isn't needed as much. Something that's interesting about Buck, though, is that Brazil loves this character. I have no idea why, but they do. So if you watch VR games, expect a lot of Buck. Next up is Gronk. Gronk, I mean, he's a DPS that farms teams that have deployables, and he's really good at that. But that situation, like, never comes up, ever? I don't think it's come up once this patch. Or maybe once. I think once, maybe. I don't remember. I'm trying to think, but if it's a good Gronk map, if the other team is like Anara, Ying, and Rom, yeah, sure, pick him. He'll do okay. He'll do well. But if it's not into like free deployables, then no, don't pick Gronk. He's not going to perform well. Next up is Amani, who is like, I mean, I guess she's pickable. She has her niche of like being discount Shaolin. Like, Fire Amani is like discount Shaolin. Like, she's discount Shaolin. If Shaolin is banned and you want Shaolin, you take Amani. I think that's what Amani's job is. But like, really, she's outclassed in almost every way. So if stuff is banned or taken away and they want like some certain DD or some quality or something, then yeah, she's fine. But I wouldn't expect to see her played ever. Next up is Koga. Koga only works if he's pocketed. So if you have like Torvald and Genos or Torvald and Corvus, Koga will do well. Outside of that, he won't. So he might be picked by some teams if they have a Koga player, if they have a lot of pockets. If they don't, I'm not going to pick him. Lex. Lex got a really big nerf with Discovery because it bounces between... Your mark bounces between whoever has the highest kill streaks on the enemy team, and most of the time that's going to be the main tank and the support. Lex does not want to be shooting main tanks and supports. He wants to be shooting DPS. He wants to be winning 1v1s. So he has to hope that the enemy DPS has the highest streak on the other team, which almost never happens. So he's not good. Like, he doesn't have the discovery. He just loses that talent, right? You can pick Def Hastens, but at that point, you're being outclassed by a lot of things that are in tiers above him, right? He was good because of Discovery. Discovery's bad now. Lex is bad now. You could probably still pick him in like some situation, but I'm honestly not sure what that is. I'm only keeping him here because I've seen him played a little bit, and he's still a little bit scary, but I'd be more scared of stuff in higher tiers. Next up is Skye, and this is like really low for Skye, considering I'm from NA, and NA seems to love Skye. I think Skye is really good. in some situations where you can get her. She's like she's really good into like divey things like Rom Ruckus. She'll do super well, right? She'll burn tanks. She'll help you survive. It's the extra healing. It's really good. However, she doesn't have great matchups, right? Like if the other team has a con, she's gonna suffer. If the other team is like a shield, she's gonna suffer. She doesn't have very many good matchups. She also falls off super hard late game and can be countered by some picks like Willow. So she's okay. If you get a good Skye draft, pick her. But it's very, very small. It's very unlikely that that happens. I mean, it's not unlikely. Some teams will force it. But when you force it, it's not very good. So she's pickable, though. Last one in B tier, we have Victor. Victor's thing is that he does a lot of damage. Other things do more damage. Therefore, you pick the other things. That's it. Like, why do you pick Victor over a sniper, or Leon, or Shaw, or Vivian, or you get the idea? Like he can work, right? He still does his thing. He's not garbage. You could pick him and be fine. But like I wouldn't expect to see too much of him. Europe, I think Europe likes this character. Was it Europe or Brazil? Some region likes him still. Like I don't think he's dead, but I don't think he's very good. All right, on to B minus tier. These are the things that you're like not gonna see, but are technically pickable. Moji she just sucks. She's not good anymore. Especially against good teams, right? You're talking high level scrims. She's not gonna get what she needs to do done. She was good before because like she could really work. Like she just controlled the space around her super well. She had so much area denial just by existing. But now that like since the nerfs, she just doesn't do that as well. She doesn't win fights as often. She was niche before, and they nerfed her. Don't expect an emoji. Talus. I don't think I ever thought that I would have been saying that a character was outclassed by Koga. Talus does the same thing as Koga, where if you have like a Tor of Genos or a Tor of Corvus and you want to pocket something, Talus will work in that niche, but nothing else. But in that niche, he's outclassed by Koga. So you're going to see him if Koga is gone and the team gets pockets and wants to play Talus. So basically, you're not going to see him. Next up, Saris. Saris is outclassed in 99.9% of situations as a support. You're not going to see Saris. She's not good. You might see Soul Collector. That'd be more likely, I think, if someone pulled that out as a gimmick strat. But you're not going to see Heal Saris. People haven't put time into it. People don't play it. Like, why would you ever pick Saris over anything else? There's just no reason. And with that, that is the tier list. I hope it's useful. I hope I explained things well. This meta is really interesting because you can lose in draft super easily. Like you give up, you have to get so many things you have to worry about. You have to worry about pockets. You have to worry about tank matchups. You have to worry about Willow. You have to worry about snipers. You have to worry about just normal drafting things on top of that. Like there's so much. It's a really fun meta. Like I enjoy this meta. I mean, as much as I can enjoy a meta with pockets, even though they are being banned a decent amount. But yeah, so you have an idea of what drafts looks like. You're gonna see a lot of first pick. You're gonna see first pick Torvalds and Koz if it's up. You're gonna see a lot of first pick Rom. Io's not gonna be first picked. Genos is first pickable. You're gonna see a lot of teams taking a lot of early tanks, trying to get really good tank rotations. Like if Koz banned and one team is Rom and Khan, there's not many good tanks left. So stuff like you're gonna see a lot of tanks picked really early. And if you do not see what I'm talking about because you're watching Europe or Brazil or something, it's probably because they're making a mistake. These teams are not perfect. I don't think they have as good of a grasp on the meta as some of the NA teams do, and I'm going off NA here. So I think, well, first of all, I think that if there was like a world championship, if the teams were to play against each other, I think North America would do pretty well. So that's a real shame that we don't get to have a worlds this year, but yeah, kind of sucks. Anyhow, I'm gonna finish this out with one last shameless plug: twitch.tv/thefishnet. I'm gonna be doing a watch party for all the drafts and stuff. So if you're like interested in this sort of thing, or even if you just want to see like some extra commentary on some pro league games, then stop by when these things are live. So anyhow, hope you guys enjoyed. Hope I don't get flamed too hard for putting Skye at B tier and Willow at A+, but anyhow, I will see you guys next time.